pretty damn excited about our first mock draft of the year.
That's what I was gonna say. Like, I don't know if I've been more excited to do an episode. Since we have started the Holy Backboard podcast, only one time has Portland had the opportunity to have multiple first round picks. That was again in 2017, but neither of those three picks were projected to land in the lottery. So this is really the first time since '06 the Blazers could have two potential lottery picks. So it's been really, I think, interesting, but also exhilarating a bit to watch a lot of college basketball, study these prospects, especially given that there hasn't been really a reason to watch NBA basketball for our Blazers, as we already know what the vision is for this season. So to have something to look forward to has been really helpful. I've mentioned this before. It's been really almost cathartic to just kind of zone out and study the draft and see what prospects are going to fit where. Just a great release break, really, from the day-to-day grind of everything, personally, and with external everything going on out there as well. So I know everyone has their own way of kind of breaking free, and this has kind of been it for me and you. So to actually project a bit has been really fun, because I one of the first things I do, Sage, when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, who has updated a mock draft? I just need to see what people think is going to happen. And I know it's silly, like it's a mock draft, it's not even real, but there's something about it that I think people gravitate to. When I worked for the Trailblazers, and even if we just had one first round pick, starting around March, I would do what's called like a mock draft roundup. And I would update that every single day. I would have a document. I think it lived on our website. And there's maybe 30 draft sites, and I would update that thing every day. And that was one of the leading page hitters across the website. And it just kind of spoke to, like, people love the unknown. People love the draft. People love to see the new player, the new big thing that could be added to the roster. Everybody loves the new person, the new player. It's just exciting. You don't know what they can bring. It could be the next Damian Lillard. It could be the next Greg Oden. Like, you just don't know. And I think that's really exhilarating. So to be able to do this for the first time on the Holy Backboard is incredible. And before we kick it off, we'll kind of discuss our thought process with each pick, but how we are actually conducting this mock draft, because it's going to be different than many you've read before. So how this will work, we're going to be doing these once a month. So this is our first one. We'll do one in late April, and we'll do one after the lottery has actually been set. But up until the lottery has been set, you had a really good idea to put our own Holy Backboard spin on the mock draft. So we are utilizing tankathon.com, and they have the lottery standings as of March 23rd, 2022. And so how we're going to do it is we are going to sim this lottery until it gives Portland a top 4 pick, and they keep the New Orleans pick. So it's not just going to be every mock draft where you see that Portland's going to be picking at 7 and then at 10. No, we could be picking at 2 and 12 or whatever. So Sage, we're going to let you sim this lottery, and we'll figure out the draft order. And once we have it, we'll list it out, and then we'll kind of go either or.
Doesn't work. Doesn't work. Seriously doesn't work.
There we go. We have the order. So
San Antonio with a humongous jump.
In our order, it goes as follows. The number 1 pick belongs to the San Antonio Spurs. Number 2, Oklahoma City Thunder. Number 3, the Orlando Magic. Number 4, the Portland Trailblazers. Number 5, the Houston Rockets. Number 6, Detroit Pistons. 7, Sacramento Kings. 8, Indiana Pacers. 9, New York Knicks. 10, the Portland Trailblazers once again. 11, Washington Wizards. 12, the Memphis Grizzlies via the Los Angeles Lakers. 13, the Atlanta Hawks. And 14, the Charlotte Hornets. Sage, would you like to kick us off and draft?
Yeah, I'll let you have the Portland picks.
All right. So with all due, go ahead with the number one pick. Who are you taking for the San Antonio Spurs and why?
I mean, with Coach Popovich, a lot of the worry of scheming Chet Holmgren out, so the red flags that he has are lessened. I mean, you have such a good roster around him. You got DeJounte, you got Devin, you got Lonnie Walker, you got Kelton Johnson, you got Jakob Pertl. Having Chet be that Tim Duncan like player when they rose 7 picks. So I think the Spurs lucking out again, getting a potential transcendent defender with all of the scheming that Pop can do to make sure that his rebounding isn't as a negative. I mean, the Spurs lucked out in this simulation. I think that they would go Chet over Jabari. But do you have any? Do you think different, or do you think Chet would be the guy?
I think this is one scenario where Chet would make sense, just given the fact that Greg Popovich is a unicorn head coach, coaching a unicorn type player. I feel like he is probably the best coach for Chet to go into, bring him along slowly, but also give him the freedom to really expand his game and to play with success. Like he's done it with Kawhi, he's done it with Tim Duncan. He knows how to coach forwards and posts. So I think this makes the most sense. They clearly need a 4 or 5, and we will be taking team needs into consideration. So I could definitely see them taking Jabari Smith, but if Chet were to go number 1, I think San Antonio probably makes the most sense just because you can play Chet along that front line, and they already are a pretty solid defensive minded team. You have to be playing for Coach Popovich, and it's a franchise that understands the vision. They understand the long-term outcomes of their actions. And I don't think it's a team that feels pressured to win now. I mean, hell, they've won 5 NBA championships since 1999. Like there's not a whole lot of pressure to get back to that point. So they can take their time. The fan base has been spoiled. It's not like they've been waiting 40 plus years for a title. They can really go at their own pace. And it's a franchise that has really set their own pace since Greg Popovich took over. So yeah, I would probably agree with that pick.
I mean, just think about the switchability defensively, man. You got DeJounte, you got Devin, you got Chet. Like this, that they are building something really, really dangerous defensively. Like teams aren't getting 110 on this team very often with all of the things that they can do to defend basically any team. I don't like that is a very, very strong defensive team for the San Antonio Spurs lucking out with Chet Holmgren. And they had a 6% chance at getting first, which, I mean, good shit.
All right. With the number 2 pick in the draft, the Oklahoma City Thunder are going to select Jabari Smith from Auburn University. I don't think any team is more happy to move up in the draft than the Oklahoma City Thunder. They are a team that dropped last year. It worked out in their favor. They were able to take Josh Giddey, but as a team projected to go 4th, they would be missing out on one of those 3 forwards, which they desperately need. I think you always take best player available, but the Thunder would have to be feeling pretty down if they do end up at 4 because they have Giddey, they have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, they have Lou Dort. They are a team that kind of does need to pick for need, but in this instance, they're able to take the best player available who happens to fill that need, and it's Jabari Smith. I think you plug and play him day one, and he's able to fit in right there. And I think he also has a chance to really grow with those guards. I mean, just think about where he's came from playing with, Katie Johnson and Wendell Green, going to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Josh Giddey. I think that's got to be a godsend for him. And, it's early, but it's starting to take shape of those Oklahoma City Thunder teams, a decade ago when they were drafting Durant, Westbrook, and Harden. Like they're starting to utilize these picks and build really talented assets that fit well together. And that's the key. So I think this would be a no-brainer. They send this pick in immediately after San Antonio heads to the podium.
So after this draft pick for Oklahoma City, the one real need is that 5 for them, right? They've got the 1, they got the 2, they got the 3. They have some bench help now. Really, if they wanted to compete, they would spend some major money in free agency and get that center.
And they have cap space.
Yeah.
Plenty.
So do you think that this would be if they got Jabari Smith, would this be kind of the end of the tankathon Oklahoma City has been on for the last few years?
It's hard to say because they are still such a young team and they really don't have a lot of veteran presence on that roster. So I think they will give it the old college try, probably for half the season. You would hope that with a Giddey and a Jabari Smith and a Pokashevsky, who needs a lot of run, Trey Mann, the first round pick from Florida last year as well, that they will continue to play. So I don't think they will have the tankathon that they're doing right now. I don't think they're necessarily doing it right now. They're still playing Shea. They're still playing Giddey. They're just really not playing their vets in like Derek Favors, which I completely understand. I just don't think it's a roster ready to win. So I don't think they're intentionally going to process it like the Sixers did under Sam Hinkie, but they still could be in this position next year because they are so young. If I am Sam Presti, I'm using this cap space to kind of fill in some decent vets that can really mentor a player like a Jabari Smith and show him the ropes. Like this is how you spend your money. This is how you conduct yourself. You know, when we go on road trips, this is kind of what life in the NBA is like. I think that aspect of rookie life is so represented and underrated that it would be, I think, a disservice to their young players to not have vets waiting to, show them the ropes. I think that's probably a reason why you see teams like the Kings fail so often, is because they don't really have that culture in place to say, this is how we do things. And you see so many of their players kind of, fall off the tracks.
So like having those Ricky Rubio vets would help.
Ed Davis, those type. Yeah.
So when I think of this Oklahoma City team, I think of a really, really fast pace team with Giddey and Shea and Dort. Like I feel like this would be one of like top 5 fast teams, and I think this team would be really fun for the near future and beyond with the roster construction and the talent that they all have. So this would be a very nice pick for the Oklahoma City Thunder. With the 3rd pick, the Orlando Magic dropped down 2 spots, and I think that they would, because of Suggs, because of Cole Anthony, I don't think they would be valuing Ivy as highly as Paolo Banchero. So I think Paolo would be that guy. When you look at that Orlando roster, all they have are 1s, 4s, and 5s. So I wish that they were in the range to get a small forward, but Paolo has the self-creation ability that Orlando could very much use. I mean, because of injuries, they didn't really get to field the team that they actually constructed with John Isaac and then Chuma Okeke. The injuries have really negatively affected his lateral quickness. So getting Paulo, I think moving Wendell Carter to 5 and then potentially trying to trade Mo Bamba would be a nice role for him because Carter has been playing some good ball. And then they would have Suggs, Cole Anthony, Franz Wagner, Paulo, and Wendell Carter. So that is a young, very talented lineup, and they could potentially build off of that because you don't know what you can get from Mo Bamba, but like Mo Bamba's always going to fetch some real value because of the athletic ability. I mean, it might be time for them to cut that off and see if they can get another high value pick. I mean, the small forward is going to be that weakness for them, but they have avenues in which to compete in the near future. So I think Paulo is the guy for Orlando.
Yeah, I think it's It's the right pick. I don't think he's the best player at this point, but just given the glutton of guards, and you even forgot to mention RJ Hampton and Markelle Fultz. Fultz is a player who has 2 years left at over $33 million.
And Gary Harris too. That's a
He's
lot.
Expiring. So Gary Harris is expiring, and Mo Bamba has a restricted offer. So they could pay $10 million to have him play next year, sign him to a long-term deal, or just let him go. So that does reduce a little bit of the roster weight. But I'm with you. If you're Orlando, you really wish there was a star small forward in this draft. And I think there is something to be said about taking the best player available. But Orlando has tried to do that, but they haven't had any scenarios in play. Like they continued to take, they had Aaron Gordon. Oh, let's draft Jonathan Isaac.
Mm-hmm.
They had Nikola Vucevic. Oh, let's draft Mo Bamba. They had Cole Anthony. Oh, let's draft Jalen Suggs, even though we had Markelle Fultz as well. So they don't really think it through. They're like, oh, this player is number one on our board, but there's no rhyme or reason to how they're going to execute that roster construction and moving those players for other players that can kind of fit. They should have a ton of cap space. Somehow, some way, Terrence Ross is still on that roster for next season. So we'll kind of see how that works. But I think you take their forward, which I think they could use more than another 6'4" guard, and they make it work. I think it's going to be interesting with how well Wagner has played. Mm-hmm. I don't think they want to move him to the bench. Can you get Paolo to play some five? I don't know. Defense is not really his specialty. Orlando is the one, probably the messiest roster, I think, in the entire NBA. It's not the worst. I just think it's the messiest. I would have taken Banchero as well. But they still have a lot of work to do to figure that out.
Oh, I mean, I feel like they'll be right back trying to get that 2023 high first round draft pick. So, but I think that this gives them at least a way of like a blueprint of success. They got a guy that can create his own shot. Their guard rotation's set. Now they need to just get some forwards and get healthier. I mean, I think this is another team that needs to get some Ricky Rubio type vets to mentor their guys. Because, Markelle Fultz is still very young and is playing really well as of last time I checked. So, yeah, this team just needs some guidance. But with Paulo, they have a nice rotation of players. And, the shot creation that he can show. Duke is such a bad place for guys to show off that dribble creation. So maybe he has a lot more to show. Having Mark Williams be there at the rim every time he drives, it's got to be tough. And I think he's driven the most out of every player in the NCAA so far. So,
all right. With the fourth pick, the Portland Trailblazers are selecting Jaden Ivy
I wanted that for Houston.
From Purdue University. This is best player available. There will be no more Bowie Jordans, Odin Durants, Webster Pauls. We're not doing that. Yes, team needs are taken into consideration, but Jaden Ivy is number 2 on my big board. I think he has a chance to be the best player from this draft. Watching him play, there's no one like him in college basketball. The speed, the athleticism, the burst, the explosion, and he's getting the jumper. He's hitting NBA threes. He's making it happen. I think he's too good to pass up on. Clearly, this means the Blazers would need to move on from either Dame or Anthony, but I like Ivy ceiling higher than Anthony Simons. So if that's what has to be done, that's what has to be done. And I just think he's clear cut the best player available. When you're picking this high, you can't pick for need. You see it all the time in NFL drafts and in NBA drafts. When teams go for need over the best, 2-3 years down the road, you're looking like, why didn't we just take that best player and make it work? And I do think you need to have a plan in place to make it work, because you clearly can't have Dame, Ant, and Ivy, but Ivy is too special. He's to that point where it's like, okay, he's so far ahead of everyone else, just at least in my eyes, that I think you have to find a way to make it work. And so I would take Jaden Ivey, who I think is the second best player in this draft. And starting to get a good feeling about him, like I did Durant in that '07 class as well.
And I mean, the beautiful thing about the Blazers having 2 picks in this scenario is you can get your power forward at 10. So you knocked out one of the things that the Blazers need with Ivy. You might have, counterpunched it too hard and the person's head fell off, but you definitely got your guard with Jaden Ivy. Um, so in this scenario, if you were the GM, what would you do with the other 2 guards?
I think you match any offer for Anthony. You cannot let him go for free. And clearly, you don't know any of this information prior to the trade deadline. So there's no 2020 hindsight. You should have done this. You should have done that. I think at that point, I probably ask Dame, like, this is our guy in Jaden. Like, do you want to mentor him? Do you want to be along for the ride? Or do you want us to find you a place like we did for CJ? And I think that's probably the avenue that I would go through first, because it's so hard to do sign and trades for restricted free agents. And so then I would initiate the full rebuild, right? That's just how I would operate. I know there's this rebuild with Dame narrative, and there's a lot of, I think, leakage behind that as well, as we saw with the Shams Charnia Athletic article. The Blazers are looking to acquire Jamie Grant, and they're going to start to go all in. And then Chauncey Billups is talking to Chris Haynes like, this is not a rebuild. The Blazers for so long have been so scared of that word rebuild, and it's interesting because they really haven't accomplished anything since 2000. It's been 22 years since they have won a conference final game. It's been 30 years since they played in the NBA Finals. I'm just trying to be as honest and open as possible, like really judging this team as objectively as possible. I don't know if that top 10 player, top 15 player is out there that you're going to add with Dame to really compete. And maybe you can. I personally haven't seen that path. I haven't seen that vision. So, I mean, it's probably something that these decisions may not happen until the trade deadline. Like, personally, I would probably wait. I'd probably let Dame start. You want to build that trade value back up. Teams are going to want to see how he's playing post-surgery. I don't think you move him in the summer because you're going to get pennies on the dollar. Like, you need to get peak value. And I think you get that with Dame performing well. And even if it's bringing Ivy off the bench, like, he's still only 20 years old. Like, he doesn't need to start right away. So I think it's a long story short. I think it's a fluid situation. Like, first thing, you got to match Anthony because you can't let him go for free. And then you can kind of wait and see how everything plays out and kind of go from there, because at a certain point, Anthony will be trade eligible. Dame hopefully will have his value, boosted. And then you can kind of see how the season is going. They still have the exception. They still have the mid-level exception. Still probably going to bring Yusuf Nurkic back. So there are a lot of different ways that this could go. But I think, in my mind, Ivy is so good that, as muddy as all of that was, he'll clear it up. Like, he is worth all of that work to try and clear it up, because I guarantee it, like 5 years from now, we're going to be looking back at this draft and we're going to say, why didn't Jaden Ivy go number 1? Why didn't he go number 2? How in the hell did he slip to 4? Kind of like people when Luka got picked. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Luka, but everyone's like, oh my God, how did Luka not go number 1? So I think he's got that gravitas around him.
So if the if the rebuild is between Ant and Jaden, who do you trust more being the on-ball guard? Because I think both of them are combo guards.
Both of them are combo guards, but I would say I think Anthony is so much better with the ball in his hands than without. I've seen Ivy play really well without the ball. So that's where I would go. I would say, Ant, you're the lead guard. Ivy, you can be our secondary playmaker, which is where I think he really excels. Like, I compared him to a smaller Clyde Drexler in that sense during our Future Fridays. And that's because while watching Clyde, you don't want to bring the ball every time up the court, but with the ball in his hands, he makes magic happen. Like, he averaged damn near, he was leading assist man on a lot of those teams, even with Terry Porter there. So he can make plays with the ball, but I don't think he needs to have the ball in his hands at all times. He can bring the ball up the court on the break. He's just exhilarating. You hold your breath when he has the ball in the open court. But I think Ant really needs to be the primary ball handler. And he has also shown really good catch and shoot. So I think there could be a good trade-off between ball handling duties. If you had to ask for percent, I'd probably say like 65% Ant, 35% Jaden.
And I think the ability to pull off the dribble that Ant showed this year, I mean, to take him off ball would be a tough ask when he's shown so much ability as that dribble pull-up shooter. And Ivy has shown a little bit of it, but again, it's not the sample size that you need to be that elite guard in this league. I think every elite guard has that pull-up game. Let's try and utilize Ant so in a few years he can be that super elite pull-up guard like Steph or Trae Young. Like, I mean, Russ has to be the only quote-unquote elite guy that doesn't have that ability. So I really wish that Houston got Ivy because I think there's a glaring need. But since he's off the board, I'm trying to make it so Jalen Green is the most optimized as a player. So with that thought process, I gotta go AJ Griffin because it has shown the ability to be that off-ball guy at Duke, being Paulo's second best teammate. So he knows that role. I mean, yeah, so I would go that. They have three guards that are pretty switchable, have shown the ability to shoot. Houston, when I've watched them, has had really bad spacing. So I think that AJ would help the spacing of that team, would help have a versatile shooter and scorer on that team. He fits with everybody I can think of on that team that can last. Like right now, they're using Eric Gordon and Garrison Matthews as their starting three. So to go from Eric Gordon's old ass to AJ Griffin, I think is a humongous step. I don't think that AJ would be a negative on Jalen Green's career. I think that they've done a really good job of putting negatives on his career thus far. So having a guy that can just flow off ball, score at a high level, defend, I think AJ Griffin would be the guy. I was thinking of Johnny Davis for the exact same role, but I wanted to go with AJ because I believe in the shot, and I think Duke is hampering him way more than the Wisconsin Johnny Davis's because the spacing and the dribble creation. I've seen AJ do it a lot more than Johnny, so I'm going with AJ in the 5 spot with Houston.
Yeah, I think Jalen Green with that roster taking him 2 overall kind of has to be your alpha moving forward. And it's a strange roster because there's been reports like they may be looking to get rid of Christian Wood. Kevin Porter Jr. was kind of taking on as a reclamation project. But again, I think he has similar tendencies in terms of wanting the ball like Jalen. So you do need a player who's going to have a lot of low usage. So I think that's a solid pick between AJ or Johnny, and you have the preference for AJ. So I have no qualms at AJ at 5.
Nice. I mean, like this is a very long project with the Houston Rockets, but I think that the thought process has to be for the Houston Rockets to optimize Jalen because he was such a high pick. He has that God-given athleticism where, you know, he might only have 3 good plays in the night, but those 3 good plays are just magnificent, top shot worthy plays. So I think to have a guy like AJ that can just shoot, play defense, and play as a high level guard with high intelligence, like that could be the backcourt of the future if Jalen absolutely crushes his 99th percentile. So I trust Steven Silas would be able to utilize AJ Griffin, and it's going to be interesting to see what they do with the bigs, because I believe in Alperen Sengun as that, like as a playmaking hub. So running DHOs with Jalen and AJ spotting up off of that could be some deadly pick and roll shit. So Steven Silas is gonna get a marksman from 3 and AJ Griffin the third, or AJ Griffin.
This is a tough scenario. The Detroit Pistons dropping down 4 spots. Clearly, they are not happy in the Motor City, but they did win the lottery last year. So that's just how the cookie crumbles sometimes. So this may be a little bit of a surprise. But again, this isn't going to be a group think mock draft where you look at every mock draft.
Are you doing what I think you're about to do?
I don't know. So with the 6th pick, I have the Detroit Pistons selecting Jalen Duran.
Oh, wow. I really was not thinking that. Good shit.
From the University of Memphis. And I was thinking, what shooting guard could work. And there's plenty. They could go the upside pick with Shaedon Sharpe from Kentucky. They could take a player to play alongside Cade Cunningham and Benedict Mathurin, as well as Johnny Davis. But looking at that roster and looking what they're trying to build, they're likely moving off of Jeremy Grant. They really only have Saddiq Bey at the 4. I know the team is built around Cade Cunningham. Who better to work alongside than a defensive-minded big who is the youngest player in the draft, can rebound, can really anchor that defense. And a great defense is the best way for a young guard to initiate offense. Get out on the break and just fly, get those easy buckets. I think Jalen Duran makes a lot of sense for this team, especially given how few impact bigs there are in this draft. Detroit will have another chance in the second round to get a guard, maybe a Bryce McGowan's from Nebraska, up Blake Wesley from Notre Dame. Whoever falls, they're going to have a really great chance to find another guard. I think for a team that is probably bottom 5 in damn near every defensive metric, Jalen Duran makes a lot of sense, especially alongside Saddiq Bey, who stretches out that defense. I think they can address the guard position, the shooting guard, elsewhere. I don't think they'll be able to grow with a big like this. So I think it makes a lot of sense for the Pistons to go upside here. And they're clearly building for the future with Cade and Saddiq. So they're another team that can kind of take their time along the way, and they'll have a lot of cap space as well. I mean, at the moment, they are projected to have under $80 million in cap, not in cap space, under $80 million committed to the next season. So they will have plenty of money to throw around. This is kind of the beauty of the draft taking place before free agency. So I think they're going to go Jalen. I think he's the best center by far in this class. And it gives them, I think it goes back a little bit to their bad boy roots. Like they're a lunch pail, blue collar franchise. And I think he embodies that. He was very impressive at the tournament in person, and he has been progressing nicely as the youngest prospect who reclassified into the class of 2022. He's only getting better, and I think he still could be growing as well.
So do you think that there's a problem with Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duran, since they used a first-round pick on Stewart, who I think that they would both be the same sized player? I'm honestly shocked that you picked Duran, because I thought that you were going to go Johnny or Benedict. I really thought that's what you were going to do, because just when you look at the Detroit Pistons, they have no shooters for Cade Cunningham driving into the lane and finding an open guy. I feel like Johnny Davis or Benedict would be really perfect as that long-range shooter to open up spacing. But the Duran pick, it shows that, I mean, you go your superstar guard 1, and then the next year you take your franchise center at the next year.
It's kind of like an NFL team drafting their quarterback, and then, okay, we got to protect him with this offensive line.
Yeah, it's smart. It's smart. I was kind of just thinking that it would be a guard because of the need, but if we're as confident about Jalen as we've been thus far, that's a really good pick at 6 for Detroit, who misses out on the top 5. So I think that that's a really nice upside pick for Detroit. Honestly, with 7 at Sacramento, I just don't know how they don't take uh, Keegan Murray out of Iowa. Because,
Oh, that surprises me.
well, just think about what they did as a team. They pushed in their chips. We're gonna get Sabas, and we're going to utilize Sabas, his strengths, his weaknesses. Well, we all know his strength is passing and offense, and just being a great scorer and passer in that next level. But what his negative is he's not a good defensive player. I think Keegan Murray fits that role as a guy that could fully pair with Sabas as a small ball four. We've seen the off-ball defense, which is at a super high level. It kind of dropped during the year, but it was still very good. If he can get back to the just super toolsy defensive player that just outsmarts players with verticality and really good rotation as the four-man, I think he fits the role. He hits at, we believe in the shot. I was thinking about Sochan or Easton, but those two don't have the win now type of thing that Keegan Murray does. I think the Sacramento pushed themselves into a zone where they have to compete, and I think that Keegan Murray does so at the places that that they lack the most. So I go Keegan at 7 for the Sacramento Kings.
Damn, I was hoping he would slip to 8. I think he fits perfectly for what Indiana
I
wants
know,
to do.
but I think he fits with Sac too.
I know, like the Pistons, like the Kings are a terrible team. I was like, well, the Kings really need a 2 guard. So I thought they would go with one of the 3 on the board. But real quick, back to Detroit and Isaiah Stewart. I think Isaiah Stewart, even when that trade went down, we were both kind of like, thank God Detroit took him because we traded Covington. There were a lot of other players we liked. I think Stewart projects as a backup big, and I think, took him mid in the first round. So I don't think you need to commit to him being a starter. But moving on to the Kings, I think that is a Kings pick, right? They feel the need to win now, and I think Keegan's a win now player. I don't know what they do with Keegan Murray and Domas playing alongside each other.
How so?
Are you going to play
offensively or defensively?
Defensively. I think offensively that's fine. Defensively, I think that team just has so many. I think trading for Sabonis puts that team at such a disadvantage defensively because I don't know where you play him. I think he gets torched as a 5, but he clearly can't keep up with the 4s. It was a nightmare trade, and it's not really working out for them so far.
I feel like I would bet on Keegan to be able to defend off ball to make up for the mistakes that Sabonis does more so than Sochan and Easton. I mean,
oh yeah, I would take Murray over those prospects as well.
So yeah, I mean, I could go guards, but I felt like there were more polished shooting guards later in the draft, or they pay big money for somebody in free agency. But those power forwards that can help defensively and not cover, but help to cover up Sabas's mistakes is a much more difficult thing to find in the league. And I mean, shit, if he hits if he hits, I mean, that's the 4 that every team's looking for. I mean, like he's tall, he can move, he can switch, he's smart. Like I think it's a decent move because of what they did with the Sabas trade. It pushed them into one zone, and they can't think of like development when the one zone is obviously compete.
You took my pick for the Pacers.
Well, you took my pick for Houston.
That's fair. This is going to be, I think, the most difficult selection because what Indiana is looking for is probably that 3 or 4 to play alongside Miles Turner, but also alongside they have Brogdon, they have Duarte, and they have the newly acquired Tyrese Halliburton. So
And Buddy.
You would really hope that there would be just a knockdown, no brainer forward pick, but I don't think there is, and I think they need to take the best player available. I think this is where we see Kentucky's Shaden Sharp
Oh, I like it.
get taken off the board. And this is the man of mystery in the draft. I can't tell you really what he does well. I mean, there's just no film on him outside from a couple of tournaments that he played in high school. But we have seen when players were able to go straight to the professional league right out of high school, they were taken based off of that competition. They were taken on upside and athleticism and, what can you do for me lately? He's a player that has already grown 2 inches. He's at 6'6" now, which I think allows him to play not only the 2, but the 3. And for a franchise like Indiana, I think they're in a similar boat as Portland. They're probably the Portland of the East, to be honest. They've always been on that treadmill. They're finally in rebuild mode. What better player to take than maybe the most upside player in this draft? And you're getting a player who I think is going to have a really good safety blanket in Tyrese Halliburton. He is probably one of the best young pure point guards in this draft. He, even as a sophomore in the league, is going to know where to get his guys open. He is going to make the transition probably as smooth as possible for a young player. It's a franchise that has an established head coach in Rick Carlisle who has won. I think the rebuild is probably a little bit foreign to Carlisle, but it seems like they finally made that decision to halt the brakes on, just making the playoffs and getting out of the first round. And, if you're going to rebuild and you don't hit in the top 4, why not swing for the fences with Shaden Sharp here?
I like it. I definitely like it. And because of Halliburton, everybody's raising up a few levels offensively because of what he can do as that point guard. And we discussed it, I think, a few weeks ago. He's the best point guard in Pacers history. Even as a sophomore in the league, the way that his vision, he can make players open that aren't actually open because of how he can read what is happening in front of him. So I think that Sharp is a really nice pick because he is that man of mystery. We've heard what Calipari has said about him as he looks like a number 1 pick. And for him to not play a single second at Kentucky and become the 8th pick overall, salute to Shaden Sharp. With the 9th pick, you kind of left me with a few selections. I think that it's obvious that the New York Knicks are looking for guard play. If you've watched the New York Knicks recently, they lack guard play because Kemba's out for the rest of the year.
RJ is their primary ball handler.
Well, and then Alec Burks is their point guard. Like, they don't have a point guard outside of Miles McBride who doesn't play enough.
Well, isn't Emmanuel Quickly? I mean, he showed a lot as a rookie. It seems like he's just been buried unnecessarily on the bench.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with Tibbs, though, as a coach, is he favors those older guys. Like, I mean, I'm looking for a girl that can treat me as good as Tibbs treats Taj Gibson, bruh. Like, straight up and down. Like,
if we're being honest, I think of the picks in the draft, this one has like trade watch in big bold red letters. Like, I think the Knicks, they're definitely in win now mode. I don't think Tibbs wants a rookie. I think
they don't want, yeah.
They would move. I think they would move this pick, but for the sake of this,
we can't really project trades.
Yeah, we can't project a trade. So, but I do think this is high trade watch pick right here.
So, part of me would love to have a guy like Benedict or Johnny here, but I think that they take Ty Washington, the only pure point guard in this draft that's worthy of a lotto pick. I think they take Ty Washington, and he's kind of like the secondary ball handler to RJ and RJ's thing. RJ goes to the paint a lot. He kicks it out. I trust that Ty can at least shoot decently. he's shown the ability to do a lot of pull-up craft in the mid-range. So this might be a long-range pick to make Ty Ty fully optimized with RJ Barrett. But I think that they have to go guard here, and Ty Ty is the number one point guard on the board so far.
I think of I was thinking this. If I got the Knicks, I don't think I would have taken Ty Ty. I understand your logic, and I could see it happening.
I was thinking it was either Benedict Mathurin or Ty Ty Washington.
Yeah. I think of all of the prospects currently projected in Lotto, I think he's the one that has the most likely chance to fall. When you look at his inability to shoot the ball, he is old for a freshman. I mean, these things start getting nitpicked, and that's why you start seeing guys rise and why you start seeing guys fall. I see the logic. I could see the Knicks making that pick. If I was a Knicks fan, I would be a little bit upset because I think you have a better point guard already on your roster in Emmanuel Quickley.
I think that those two are very similar.
They are.
But I think that Ty Ty is a much better defender than Quickley right now. So you know what gets Tibbs off is defense. I think Ty Ty will put in a good effort, play 26 minutes, Quickley the other 22, and that's their point guard play, unless they scoop some superstar we're not really thinking of. But yeah, I mean, it was really between Benedict and Ty Ty, but I think that they would lean Ty Ty.
All right, so the Blazers have already taken Jaden Ivy in this.
This really works out for you if you wanted to go double guard.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I'm torn. Like, do I go complete chaos and take another guard, which basically says, bye Anthony and bye Dame, or do I look to take, a really good forward? So I'll give two options, but ultimately, what pick I would send in. I think the two options, what I'm thinking right here, are Baylor's Jeremy Sohan and Arizona's Benedict Mathurin. Now, Mathurin is 6'7", so I think you could get away with him playing the three. I think Sohan has probably maybe one of the biggest upsides defensively. I think he's one of the most versatile defenders. I do think 10 is a bit high to take him. So if I have my GM hat on right now, I would like for Cronin to maybe move down a spot or two with the intent on taking him. I would be absolutely thrilled if the draft played out this way, where you get the best guard in the draft in Ivy, and then you have a chance to add another shooter, secondary playmaker, a player who is absolutely killing it right now. And I think if we're doing this mock draft in April or in May, I think Mathurin is getting taken higher. I think his stock is on the rise. So I don't even know if he would be available. I'll go Benedict Mathurin at 10. Again, I'm sticking with my best player available philosophy, and the Blazers are going to have to figure out a way to make that work. Again, I know taking Ivy and Mathurin really reconstructs the roster to a whole other level that maybe some fans would be uncomfortable with. But when you get a chance to make a splash like this, you got to go all in. Now, if there was a Jabari Smith type of 4 that we could have taken first, I would have done that. Like, I think to get that Roy Aldridge combo this year would have been fantastic. But I do think that Ivy and Mathurin would be a great foundational building blocks for the future. And you still have a lot of chips left over. And the beautiful thing is, I think Nasir Little would fit in really well with that core moving forward.
I mean, I think the two options for Portland at that time would have been Benedict Mathurin and Easton for me. So I think that Benedict would fit in really well with his ability to be that long-range shooter. I think that you've done a very good job thus far in this mock of getting guys that actually can shoot in NBA range. You've seen Ivy do so. You've seen Benedict Mathurin do so. Like, if you've watched this team this year, the spacing's atrocious. So adding two guys that absolutely can get their shot off is huge. And just like if we kept Dame, having Ivy spotting up and Matherin spotting up at the three would be some beautiful basketball off a pick and roll with Nurkic. So I think what you would have to do in the is potentially find that a decent power forward to in the second round, or if we somehow make another trade, finding that power forward that's cheap that can do things for us, because I think that's the one glaring weakness thus far for the Portland Trail Blazers. But I love the way that you've created spacing for whatever guard is leading us, and Ivy is just like that guy that could be that secondary guy that's just MVP type guy. I mean, having Dame as a mentor for Jaden is top tier if he stays. So with this one, Washington is at 11. This one's, they do not have a point guard. I think it is I think I have to project that Bradley Beal stays.
And when I said the beauty of the draft happening before free agency, not for the Wizards. The Wizards would love to know whether they have Bradley Beal in line before they make this pick, because there are some shooting guards that they could use.
Well, I'm thinking that if I'm the coach of the Washington Wizards, I put Bradley Beal at point guard. Screw this fucking shooting guard bullshit that he's been pigeonholed into. He is their damn point guard already. So I go Johnny Davis to be that spot up guy for
I like it.
Bradley Beal. Like they don't need a power forward like Sohan or Easton with Rui and
Denny.
And then they have centers that like. So I'm trying to optimize Bradley Beal as the point guard the most. I want a guy that can be the off-ball superstar, and Johnny Davis is my guy. So at 11, we take Johnny Davis from Wisconsin. He gets paired with a superstar potentially in Bradley Beal, and they can create something really nice. Like, Johnny's not going to compete much with Bradley Beal's touches. So I think that those two can really work together. They have the guys at the 3 and the 4 that can do the dirty work to let Kristaps be Kristaps. So Johnny Davis is my guy.
The spacing on that unit is wonderful with Beal, Davis, Corey Kispert, last year's first round pick from Gonzaga, and Porzingis. If they get anything,
and Rui's shooting 40 from 3.
Yeah, if they can get anything from Rui and Denny, like that's some really good spacing. It puts them in a much better position than they've been probably since the Antoine Jamison days.
Yeah, I mean, when I was looking at the draft, I was confused and thought I was going to take the Memphis pick, and that's a way more difficult spot than Johnny Davis and Bradley Beal could be a very good combo together. So with the Lakers pick that gets traded to Memphis, who do the Memphis Grizzlies take at 12?
This is, how we talked about the New York Knicks being on trade watch. This would be 1B behind that. And I think this is all going to be predicated on how Memphis performs in the postseason. They're likely going to have the 2 or the 3 seed in the West, and there are going to be a lot of expectations for such a young squad. They have done such a masterful job of constructing a balanced roster with really solid salaries. Only Jaren Jackson Jr.'s salary is going to be increasing next season, but they still have Brandon Clark. They still have Xavier Tillman, Desmond Bane. They took Zaire Williams last year, who was performing, I think, better than most expected. Dylan Brooks kicks in a little bit too, but he's, kind of that chip on the shoulder type of player they need. Clearly, they still have Ja on a rookie contract. Like, they have really everything you want in a young roster. So it's kind of like dealer's choice. Like, who do you want to take? It's so hard because I don't know if that player exists, and I think they would rather trade it for a 3 that can play right away. Like, if they could theoretically trade this pick for a Harrison Barnes, I think they do it in a nanosecond. The one weakness I see from them is at center. Steven Adams is a good vet, but I don't know if they're going to want to extend him past the 2023 season. Like, he's due another $18 million, and they really haven't been committal to Tillman or Brandon Clark at that 5. So if I am Memphis, they could use additional defense, that grit and grind mentality. I think they go Tari Easton here.
Fuck.
I think he.
That's exactly what I would have done, by the way.
I think he's a player who exudes grit and grind. Mm-hmm. I think he can. I don't know if Tari ever projects as a starter in the league, maybe a 5th, but I think you can come in off the bench and become an all defensive type of player. And I think he could play the 4 alongside either Jaren Jackson, especially alongside Jaren Jackson, who can spread the floor and allow Tari to work on his shot. But I just think that if you're looking for persona meeting scheme and team, Easton and the Grizzlies, I mean, that
worked. That's exactly what I was going to do. That fucks me up because I was taking him at with 13 at Atlanta. Well, I think that.
I mean, the Hawks desperately need somebody to come in and play a lick of defense.
I know. So are we missing somebody super duper obvious? Because I'm taking Jeremy.
That's who I would have taken.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I was either going to take Jeremy or Tari, one of the two, at 13. So I think that Jeremy Shojan matching with DeAndre Hunter and Clint Capella can create a decent front line defensively to make up for the Trae Young bad defenses at most times. So I think that Sochan would be a really good fit. He's got to work on the shot, especially with Trae Young finding him in open spaces. But I think that would probably be the best match for who's left on the board for the Atlanta Hawks at 13. I really was thinking Tari Easton was going to be there at 13, but you swiped him from me, which good for you.
Yeah,
I think Sochan could definitely help. Like, the effort that he showed on that Baylor comeback, that's remarkable, and you remember what he can do defensively. I think that Trey's going to just have to work with him on that shot, but I think that's a really good fit.
A great fit. I think if anybody's going to give him open looks, it's going to be Trae. Like, he'll be able to shoot standstill threes when you have Bogdanovich, Trae Young, DeAndre Hunter. Like, teams aren't going to want to leave those players open, especially with the playmaking of Trae. It may get dicey playing both Capella and Sohan at the same time, but he's the best. He was the best player on the board to me, and it also addresses a massive need. And there still is uncertainties around, what are they going to do with John Collins? So,
so I think for the first year they play Hunter 28, they play Sochan 22. And that's 48 minutes of small forward for them, or whatever position Hunter and Sochan play. I think that's the 48 minutes. Like, Danilo doesn't really have that role anymore. And I think it's time for the Atlanta bench to get younger. They have a lot of old folks on that bench with Gallo and Lou Williams. So maybe it's time for that bench unit to step up for the Atlanta Hawks. So I go Sochan. So close out this lottery at 14. Who do the Charlotte Hornets get?
They really could use size. And there's a lot of uncertainties with Miles Bridges, who is a restricted free agent. This is a franchise that already has about $110 million committed to salary next year, and that's without Bridges' extension. They're likely losing Montrezl Harrell. They have only one more year left of Mason Plumlee. And I really just don't see that 3 or 4 that could come in and is just like without reaching. Like, I think there are 2 players I'm thinking about. One is, and this is not the pick, but I could see them take Kansas's Ochai Agbaji. but they did spend a first round pick last year on James Booknight,
Mhm.
and they still have Kelly Oubre. So this is where like I
And
take
Terry Rozier and
Gordon
Gordon
Hayward.
Hayward.
So this
A
is
lot of money.
where it's a lot of money. This is where it's like best player available versus fit. And I think we're in the same tier of prospect. Charlotte's been looking for a center for ages. I feel like Walker Kessler from
Isn't he
Auburn
from Charlotte
University.
too, or North Carolina?
He did play one season at North Carolina. He's from Georgia, but he
Ah,
has bloodlines. His uncle, his late uncle, was I believe the ninth overall pick of the Atlanta Hawks. His dad played at Auburn or Georgia, excuse me. Kessler feels like a Michael Jordan pick. He's he's the premier shot blocker aside from Chet Holmgren. He's the premier shot blocker though in college basketball. His numbers are through the roof. And if we're talking about Jabari Smith getting good guard play at Oklahoma City, Walker Kessler playing alongside LaMelo Ball, I mean, he is really going to become that lob threat for them. I trust the shot. I think it'll take a year or two, but I think he's going to be able to extend his range. So you're going to get some pick and pops with him. I love the fit. I think he fills in a need, but he's also a high upside player. Just the progression he's shown from his freshman year at North Carolina to his sophomore year at Auburn. I think he's going to be that rim protector that they need. They play such a fast pace that they give up so many points that
mhm.
there's not really one player, I would say, in that starting lineup that puts their onus on defense. They're all looking to get their offense. And I
Yeah, I
think
mean, playing at that fast pace, man,
yeah,
they're gonna.
at a certain point, they need an anchor. And I think that he can, ride the bench, play backup role to Mason Plumlee for year one, but year two, I think he's going to be ready. And if that shot hits, that I think that's a solid value for a Charlotte team.
So does Mason play like 28 and then he'll be the full-time backup center?
That would be my plan. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's no way in hell that you put them both on the floor together.
God no.
Yeah. That brings back basketball from 2022 to 1842. I like that just is bad. I trust their coaching staff to put him in the right position, and having LaMelo Ball be your point guard for the first 4 years of your career is hugely beneficial to Walker Kessler and what he can do as a center prospect. But I definitely like the fit. Like at 14, it's tough. Like, do you go the G League guys that we haven't really paid attention to? Would you go Walker Kessler? Would you go Obaji? I mean, once Sochan and Easton go off the board, this draft looks kind of bleak because I think we hit every player that is in that like the realm of what will happen in the lottery. So Charlotte being 14 is tough.
All right. That was really fun. And we will do another one of those in April. But it was awesome how it played out. It wasn't just, Blazers get one, they can get their four, and then they can get a guard. So it was interesting to see what they would do if they landed four. Again, if you are enjoying this, please leave us a 5-star review and a nice comment. Lets us know we're doing something good over here. And, the feedback is always appreciated, but thank you for your listenership and your support. Sage, why don't you let our listeners know where they can hear us and take us on home?
We are available on iTunes, Stitcher, Himalaya Podcast, Dash Radio, Nothing But Net Radio, Tuesdays 2 to 3 Pacific, 4 to 5 Eastern. And we are out of here. Thank you so much for listening. Rate and review us on iTunes, 5 stars. Anything less makes us seem like we're bad. And sub to us. We really do love interacting with Rip City fans, and we are out. Peace.